So friends, loyal friends, and people we haven't met before, I hope you will all become loyal friends this time. As most of you perhaps know, I'm Gillian Bickley, one of the Proverse Hong Kong publishers and co-founder with my husband, Mila Bickley, of the International Proverse Prizes for writing previously unpublished in English. The program this evening will consist of a mixture of live and videoed interventions. The pre-recorded videos are already uploaded to YouTube. If you want to look at them on your own device, if you can't hear, you can. A little comment about Proverse books. Our books come to us either as publishing proposals or as entries for the Proverse Prize. They may have local or international subject matter. The writers may live in Hong Kong or anywhere else in the world. With the introduction in 2016 of the Proverse Poetry Prize for single poems, we now also publish an annual anthology of poems by many poets living in many countries. Our publications are available anywhere in the world from our distributors, the Chinese University of Hong Kong Press, by order from UK bookshops, including the Ivy Break bookshop run by our former Hong Kong friend Matt Steele, and also through Amazon and other online retailers. We produce paperback and e-book editions. For the past several months, we've been developing a range of audiobooks, read either by our authors themselves or by professional voice talents. Mainly, our books have been written in English, including by non-native speakers of English, but we also publish books translated into English, and in one case, translated into Chinese. As already implied, the two Proverse Prizes are international prizes administered from Hong Kong and open to anyone in the world, new, emerging, experienced and established writers who are at least 18 on the date they sign the entry documents. Entries are anonymous and the playing field is entirely level. Entries will be received on the 7th of May for this year's Proverse Prize for book-length, single-author works of fiction, non-fiction or poetry, now in its 15th year. Entries for this year's Proverse Poetry Prize for single poems will also be received from the 7th of May. Submissions may be on any topic, but there is also a set topic, space, S-P-A-C-E, space. The closing date for both prizes is the 30th of June. This year there's something different. In the case of the Proverse Prize for book-length works, we already have support from HKADC, Hong Kong Arts Development Council, for the publication of 2 entries as recommended by the judges. One of these is earmarked for the best entry of an acceptable standard from a Hong Kong writer, resident in Hong Kong, and with a Hong Kong ID card. If more than 2 entries are recommended for publication by the judges, they also will be published by Proverse, as usually done. Tell your friends. Enter yourselves. Some of our writers are here this evening. They include, please stand up or wave when I say your name. They include Catherine Chen, whose book, Mila the Magician, is written bilingually in English and Chinese. Philip Chatting, writer of the darkly humorous Hong Kong novel As Leaves Blow, not to say politically incorrect. And the short story collection, The Snow Bridge and Other Stories, which won the Proverse Prize 2014. Alicia Lee, where's Alicia? Alicia Lee in red, author of the work of popular scholarship, I think we can call it that, Reading the Quran. Jason Poisonous Polly was Jason, whose refrain and Cemetery Miss You were early winners of publication prizes. And Roger Uren, present this evening from Australia, whose prose and poetry collection, To Eastern Lands, is available at the book table this evening. I now have great pleasure to introduce Miss Susanna Susie Morley, Director of the British Council in Hong Kong, who's kindly agreed to say a few words. Susanna.
Gillian and Verna, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me to say a few words this evening. Just put my unfortunate specs on. It's a sign of getting older. So I'm absolutely delighted to be invited to say a few words about the Proverse Prizes this evening. They are such an important part of not just Hong Kong's literary infrastructure, but it's a gift to the world. So the Proverse Prizes for unpublished writing in English have become such an important fixture on the literary scene. And I think it's true to say that they are truly international prizes, which means that anyone over the age of 18 can enter, regardless of nationality, residency, or citizenship. I think the other remarkable thing about the prizes is that they are completely gender blind. And as Gillian said, the entries are anonymised, but about the split between genders, male and female, for winners has been about 50-50, which is a remarkable achievement. And the other thing that I think is remarkable about the Proverse Prizes is that age is no barrier either. And we know that entry level is from 18 above, and that winners to date have ranged in age from people in their 20s right through to people in their 90s. Again, I think this is another remarkable thing about the prizes. Since the founding of the Proverse Prizes in 2008, they have helped create a truly international network of writers bound together by the language they created, English. The more than 50 past prize winners, I hope I've got that number right, but please do correct me if I'm wrong, have come from all corners of the globe, including North America, East Asia, Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and the Caribbean. And for about one-third of Proverse Prize winners, English is either not their own mother tongue or the mother tongue of either of their parents. I think this is another remarkable thing about the prizes. They are an exemplar, I think, of the British Council's philosophical approach to the English language. And at the British Council, we believe that English is a universal language, and although its origins lie in the British Isles, though that can be disputed, it's a language that belongs to everyone. English has taken on a life of its own, which goes way beyond the UK. It is a tool of communication and self-expression that is open to all, regardless of nationality, residency, or citizenship. Verna and Gillian have done a remarkable service to the English literary world through their founding of these prizes, and it is thanks to them that many new writers have first come to light, and the prizes have been a catalyst for many literary careers. I should add that both of them have also made their own significant contributions to English literature, but to cover these achievements would require me to make a much longer speech, and perhaps in another forum. But the dedication of Verna and Gillian to their work is to be warmly congratulated, and I think perhaps we should give them a round of applause. Finally, I would like to say congratulations to all this year's prize entries and prize winners. I am sure that recipients of the Proverse Prize will find that it will provide a solid base from which you can build your literary careers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Susan. Very generous comments. Thank you very much. Now to one of the main events of the evening, the introduction of the finalists for the Proverse Prize 2022. Dr. Gillian Bickley, Proverse co-publisher and International Proverse Prizes co-founder, has recorded this introduction.
Greetings, everyone. Gillian and I founded the Proverse Prizes because we saw that most literary prizes were restricted in some way. We wanted there to be prizes that everyone could enter. And this is what we created. Anyone, 18 years old or more, male or female, published writer or not, is eligible to enter for the Proverse Prizes, irrespective of nationality, residence, or citizenship. Entries for the Proverse Prize in 2022 were of a high standard and received from around the world. The semi-finalists were announced at the Proverse Autumn Reception last year. The finalists have been chosen by the judges and will be made known to you now. They are Irene Bennett, Gavin Burke, Tim Johnson, Flora Chan, and Tegan Smith. Congratulations to each of you. Each finalist will tell us something about their entered work. 3 are with us this evening, and 2 have sent videos. We look forward to hearing from them.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you very much for doing that. Now, let's have Irene Bennett's talk.
What's up with my parents? Everything bugs them. I can't do anything right. Do you ever have thoughts like that? What if, in the middle of those unsettled feelings, you suddenly discover that a killer is coming for your dad? In the novel Battle of the Artisans, Tang Tun, a conflicted, artistic 12-year-old in 5th century BCE China, sets out to identify the killer and save his father. Of course he does. That's what a good Chinese son would do. He crosses wits with his macho father and a vengeful king, armed thieves and disgruntled villagers. In the process, he discovers new powers that rock his Bronze Age world. Will he stop the killer? What will matter most, Tang Tun's artistic abilities or his father's muscles and might? Or will they discover the strength of acting together? Tang Tun sprang into existence for me in the Hong Kong Central Library the day I read one statement in a book. The book, Suspended Music, was one of the first books written about the discovery of the bells of Marquis Yi, a 2,500-year-old national treasure of China. The statement said, "No one knows why these bells were made." And I thought, I do. I started writing and researching the Eastern Zhou era of Chinese history and the mystery of the making of the bell set. I traveled to Hubei province to see the tomb that had contained 125 musical instruments, including the now famous Yi bells. I walked into a copper mine that could have provided metals for their bronze alloy. In the Provincial Museum built to house the bells, I enjoyed a concert featuring them. At Chinese University in Hong Kong, I played a replica set of the bells. And then at the Tsim Sha Tsui Cultural Center, I heard the bells in the first ever East Meets West concert with the Hong Kong Symphony Orchestra. All those experiences helped me to create Tang Tun and his village on the Yangtze River and to tell the story of the making of the bells of Marquis Yi. Jonathan, a 9-year-old native of Hong Kong who didn't like reading, read the beginning chapters of Battles of the Artisans and asked, "When can I have the rest of the story?" I hadn't written it yet, so he spurred me to finish the novel. A university student from the Wuhan area, Chao Lin, read the completed manuscript and said, "How is it that you recreated my own village with a family that sounds just like mine?" An American teaching in the mainland said, "This page turner had me skipping wonderful descriptions to see what would happen next." Every historical novel is an imagined introduction to a topic and a time. Battle of the Artisans invites readers to explore the musical world and the science of the bells of Marquis Yi, to learn about the early history of China, and to consider implications for the power of family and community. I'm grateful that the judges have named my story as a finalist for the 2022 Proverse Prize. When they announced the winners of the prize competition in November this year, Proverse Publishing will also launch my book, Battle of the Artisans. I hope that readers like you will connect with Tang Tun and his world in ways that will enrich you and your world. Thank you for this honor.
Hello everybody, I'm Gavin Burke from Ireland, and I'm delighted to be named one of the finalists for the Proverse Prize 2022. My book manuscript, entitled After Hemlock, comprises a collection of poems written over a period of approximately 9 months. Much of the poems were written to and from my work location on my 3-hour daily commute from Navan in County Meath to Dolphin's Barn in Dublin. I had the idea that they would work well as a collection, as they were written by the same author, namely myself, over a specific period of time. They are observational and perceptive. They also are manifestations of what I would call a creative peak for me, and I'm immensely proud of this collection. They are broadly illustrative of the central themes of all of my work, which includes space, time, memory, life, death, love, mental health, illness, addiction, religion, and cognition. There is also a stark phenomenological aspect to their featuring. The subject matter was very much driven by my experiences on my daily commute, what I saw and heard of the same time and place. My hope for them is that they will challenge the reader to think for themselves and have their own mind on contemporary pertinent social issues. They are moral in focus and represent structures of feeling and memory in their contextualization of the ordinary. They are refracted through the keen lens of my whole life experience and are temporal, philosophical, and literary in their aspirations. After Hemlock, the poem itself, is one of the poems I am most proud of, and is a refraction, albeit a focused one, of the past few years of my life, and is driven by personal experience, which is very much embedded in the lyrical piece. There is also a musical feel to the work, and how I play around with rhythms and rhymes, as I am first and foremost a musician and composer of guitar pieces and a live performer. What I put into my music, I have put into my poetry to give it a musical edge and flow. Every sentence and line is imbued with a kind of lyrical or musical element and a musical flow in the words. Some subjects in the poems encapsulate contemporary and by default historical issues, in other words, issues that society is currently grappling with, to get a nice flavour of the now and up to the minute to the whole collection. The poetry creates a unified whole which seeks a universal morality for the world and a reinstatement of conscience. In terms of poetic technique, I try to introduce new poetic and literary techniques into each poem, so it will feel like each poem is building upon the next in the collection as a whole. I am so grateful to Proverse Hong Kong for their support of my work over the past few years, which has brought my writing to a much higher standard than before. I like to write poetry that really says something individually and collectively says even more, and forces the reader to really think about what is being stated and tentatively suggested in each poem. My work as a librarian has really helped my creative processes, giving me access to an enormous amount of books to read, absorb, assimilate and apply to my own work, so that it is in a constant state of change, flow and flux. Finally, I would like to say that it has been a pleasure to write this collection, and it overall seeks to provide an impetus for social transformation, a better life for everyone, and in doing so, a better world. It is Brechtian in its endeavours to demonstrate, to enrich and to enliven, as well as to entertain. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the evening, and thank you very much.
Now, we have live people now. I don't know if the live people are prepared. Gillian Johnson, you should come up and read yours now.
Am I prepared? What? Okay. I'm not going to read. I'm going to speak.
Okay, I've got 4 minutes, Tim. Come here to
Yeah.
the mic.
Oh, okay.
Come on, can you manage? There's a lot of wines here. Maybe we should
Yes,
hold hands over. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Come around this way.
You come around this way. I'm going to sit in your seat if I may.
Yep. Yep. Okay, my name is Tim Johnson, and my book is called Shuehu Revisited. A long time ago, I was a serious student of Chinese living in Taiwan, and at that time I read the classic novel Water Margin in translation. And I liked it, I enjoyed it. And I thought, wow, maybe someday I could read it in the original. Well, after a year and a half of serious language study in Taiwan, I moved here to Hong Kong. And near the end of my stay, I bought a 2-volume set of the novel in Chinese, 水浒传 is the title, with a companion glossary. And I thought, now I can read the original. But it was time to leave. So I shipped the books home. And when I got back to the States, my life took a turn, and I abandoned my Chinese scholarship. And the books sat on shelves, gathering dust for 45 years. And then one day, after I retired, I pulled one out, opened it up for a look, and I was astounded that I could recognize dimly many of the characters or the phonetics. And I thought, now I really can, maybe I can read the original. It might take me forever, but I just turned 70, so what? I had nothing better to do. So I started reading every day. I had a reading schedule. And after about 3 months, I thought, I'd really like to write about this reading experience. This is kind of a postmodern idea, you know. But how would I do that? And I had many false starts. But finally, I settled on a format that I used. I became a newspaper reporter after I came back to the States. That's what my career was. I used the same format I used as a reporter for long-form stories. Narrative alternating with commentary. And so in this case, the backbone of the writing project would be Shuehu's narrative. or my rendition of it. It's an adventure story set in 12th century China, when China really was the most advanced civilization in the world. And the commentaries would be brief observations that I would make about interesting aspects of the society back then that emerged in the narrative. Tattoos, vegetarianism, wall writing, all kinds of Taoist alchemy, all kinds of things. A reader could either take the whole package, or the reader could ignore the commentaries and just follow the story. The commentaries were set off to the side in a different typeface. And so the reader really could just follow the story. And what a story it is! It's a story of rebellion and betrayal and seduction and mayhem. It just goes on. It's just a wonderful tale. And it's about a bunch of stalwarts and eccentrics who band together as outlaws to defy corrupt officials. Anyway, my version is mostly translation. I do some paraphrasing here and there, but it's an unconventional book, and I wasn't sure actually if anyone would ever want to read it, because not only do I include these observations about Chinese society in the 12th century, I throw in a few of my own experiences in Taiwan, which are vaguely relevant to the thing. So it's partly a memoir. So it's part memoir, part epic, part sociological commentary, all mixed together. And it's who would want to read something like that? I don't know. And as I was writing it, I didn't really think about that. I just wrote it for my own satisfaction. I would want to read it. I didn't really care about anybody else. I was oblivious to publication prospects. And so it took me about 5 years, and after I finished, those publication prospects looked rather dim, and I realized that only a publisher who thinks outside the box would give a serious look to this unconventional book of mine, and Proverse is such a publisher because I got serious consideration in this contest, and I'm very grateful for that. And so that's that.
Hello everyone, it's lovely to be here tonight. I'm going to read a little bit. So my name is Flora Tian, and I'm happy that my novel, South of the Yangtze, has been selected as one of the finalists for the Proverse Prize 2022. Thank you so much to Dr. Gillian Bickley and Dr. Mila for founding the prize and for the consideration of the judges. So the novel is a coming-of-age story of a young woman growing up in China from the 1980s to the early 2000s against the historical backdrop of events such as the opening up of the 1980s, the political turmoil in 1989, the rapid economic development in the 1990s, and the SARS epidemic. The protagonist, Ina, contemplates on the nation's ideology, tradition, and even its written language, and pushes the boundaries of thinking which were restrained by these tools. So she eventually decides to to use English and leaves her hometown. But what is the price to pay when she adopts a new language and a new way of thinking? While liberation and frustration are often intertwined for an immigrant, what about the sadness that a future generation might never share the same sensibility or imagination, never truly connect with the lunar calendar or its poetry, being removed from the land where their ancestors lived for over 1,000 years? In that sense, South of the Yangtze is also a love letter to my homeland. The novel was inspired by a trip I took with my husband 5 years ago in the Yangtze Delta area where my family's roots are. South of the Yangtze, or Jiangnan, is often referred to as the land of fish and rice, 老鱼米之乡 in Chinese. But apart from its aquatic and agricultural offerings, many cities in Jiangnan have a rich history of art, architecture, poetry, and calligraphy. And before the state policy of prioritizing Mandarin in schools, many variations of the Wu dialect have always been a native language south of the Yangtze. So it was the knowledge of the region's cultural significance, its inevitable assimilation over recent years, and a nostalgia for my childhood's day-to-day life in Shanghai that first gave me the urgency to write a novel set in the region. And later in 2019, being in Hong Kong, the deep emotions I was feeling for this city, where I have lived for over 10 years, led the story to evolve into a meditation on two related subjects: physical migration and also the migration between languages. I hope you'll enjoy my novel, and thank you again to Proverse Hong Kong, who granted me the opportunity to share this story with my readers and gave me the greatest encouragement as a debut author. Firstly, I'm grateful for tripping right up. It's always a good start. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Smythe, and I'm a poet based in Hong Kong. I've entered my poetry manuscript for the Proverse Prize, and I'm truly delighted to be one of the finalists and to be surrounded by so many other talented writers in the room. So I'll tell you a bit about my work. I've entered my poetry manuscript. It is entitled Mountain Songs, and it's named after the Hakka tradition of Sanko, which has been a way that Hakka people have captured their stories through an oral tradition since time immemorial. I'm half Chinese, and my heritage on my mother's side is Hakka. In some ways, this body of work is a love letter to the maternal forebears Hakka women, many of whom never had a formal education or ever had a story written about them. Hakka people are historically nomadic. The name for their group in Chinese is guest people. Hakka people are historically nomadic. The name for their group in Chinese is guest people or guest family. Oftentimes they are described as the Jews of China or gypsies, but both Western analogies do not truly capture the complexity of their identity. Hakka people are considered Han Chinese, but also lack a homeland, do not always subscribe to the same social customs as neighbors, and at times the community has also faced persecution. The Hakka diaspora outside China is very spread out, with many people adopting new names and customs while keeping old traditions alive. My work examines how racial and cultural identity is deeply complex, where the trauma of forced migration can still leave a mark in subsequent generations, where model minorities are often forced to play a role to maintain social order, and where being comfortable in your own skin can sometimes feel like a radical act of self-love. This is my first collection and was created over 7 years. Mountain Songs touches on themes of migration, race, identity, and their way in their parents' homeland and refugees seeking asylum across borders. Professionally, I'm actually a lawyer, and I also set up my own refugee charity. So discussions around migration, in particular of those seeking asylum and forced migration, are very close to my heart, and it's very tied to this piece of work. Thematically, I posit that all these issues are interconnected and do not exist in a vacuum. It also only seems natural that as the daughter of a migrant to Australia, that this work would be so tied to that experience. I wrote most of these poems in Hong Kong over the past few years, but the poems themselves are set against the mountainous landscapes of both Australia and Hong Kong. I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity and the work of Proverse Prize Hong Kong and Proverse Prize for providing both an opportunity and a platform for me to bring my work to a wider audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jordan, for your presentations, and best of luck. The winners of the Proverse Prize 2022 will be announced at the Proverse Autumn Reception, the 18th of November this year, that's 2023, here in the Helena May, from 7 to 9:30 at the same time. Please make a note in your diaries. We'll also be announcing winners of supplementary prizes. As mentioned, these may include any of the finalists or semi-finalists. They may also include other entrants. One or more of the winning books may also be launched at the autumn reception. We now come to the launch of Mingled Voices 7. Tonight, we're launching that anthology, and it contains poems by 51 poets, selected by the judges from the Proverse Poetry Prize entries this year. The topic was renewal. Poems could also be on any subject chosen by the poet and in any form, style or genre, typically, not always, no more than 30 lines long. We're very pleased that Mr. Jeff Streeter, writer and critic, until recently director of the British Council in Hong Kong, has kindly recorded an introduction to Mingled Voices 7, which we will play. Following this, we'll hear readings of poems awarded a place in this new edition in the Mingled Voices series of international Proverse Poetry Prize anthologies. We acknowledge and express our gratitude towards the Hong Kong Arts Development Council for their support for the Proverse Poetry Prize 2022, including the publication of the anthology and this reception today. The readings are in two parts. First, those awarded first, second and third places. Then, a small group of those who won a place in the anthology, including those specially mentioned by the judges. In case you wonder, each part will follow the sequence in which the poems appear in the anthology, typically in alphabetical order of surname. If you've already purchased a copy, you can follow in the book. At this point, I say, if you haven't got a copy, wave a $100 note in the air and somebody will come and sell it to you. But you haven't really set it up to do that. Is anybody waving $100 in the air? Not at the moment. Later, perhaps. The readings will conclude with a generous message from the 2021 First Prize winner, Joanna Radwanska-Williams. So now, with Jeff Streeter's introduction to Mingled Voices 7.
Previous springs have brought us a dazzling miscellany of poetry in the form of mingled voices, and happily this year is no exception, with another batch of freshly hatched poems before us, blinking as it were in the early sunlight of our eager gaze. So, many congratulations to Gillian and Werner for producing another wonderful anthology of new poetry, and many, many thanks, of course, to all of the talented poets whose work is included in it. For me, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to read them all and to put together a preface for this year's edition. As you may have already read, this year's topic was renewal, and as in previous years, it was interpreted widely, though the term takes on a special meaning in the light of our global recovery from the pandemic. Compared to last year, and much to my relief, the poets generally seem to have got out more. In Hong Kong, at least, they made it as far as the local trains will take them, with MTR station names cropping up here and there. The sights and sounds of nature are scattered throughout the volume too. There are barbets, bulbuls, pukals, and more, taking me back to my own days walking in the hills of Hong Kong Island, so full of wonderful birdsong. There is a sense, too, of things going wrong, in some of the poems at least, as our relationship with nature takes on a more sinister turn. There are, for example, images of melting glaciers and distress calls from the forest. Yet, despite the many differences, these poems are for me still very much in the tradition of the Romantic poets who, after all, took the details and the reality of nature very seriously. I'd like to conclude with a short quote from one of my favourite poems from Mingled Voices 7, the gently optimistic Watching the Dusk on the Rainy Night, Musing, by Louisa Ternot. It ends, as I will, with these lines. A song that will not leave you wherever you may go, its notes like bells filling the air in silence.